Okay, today we are honored to have the amazing Selina Delangre today, the founder of Celtic Sea Salt. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Anthony.
Awesome.
Thank you for
Yeah, I'm super
inviting me.
excited to have you today. Um, so I'm curious to hear from myself, like, what is your story and how you got into the space in the first place in terms of salt, in terms of wellness? Like, what is your origin story?
Sure. Well, the company was started 45 years ago, and I'm really not the founder of the company. I am the person that acquired the company from the founder. The founder, it was my father-in-law, and he wrote the book Sea Salt's Hidden Powers over
Oh,
45 years ago. So he wrote
interesting.
the very first book and if you need any images or anything to post, you can have, I'll send them to you. But he wrote the first book on sea salt. And when he wrote it, this was before the internet. So most of I guess the circulation of this information was done through newsletters way back then, you know.
Okay.
And in those newsletters, they were printed by Dr. Bruce West, Dr. William Campbell Douglas, Dr. Christian Northrup, Dr. Whitaker. These are pioneers of the natural products industry. And those people started writing about the Celtic sea salt and the book in their newsletter. And then it was like an overnight success. They went to the post office, and when Jacques started the company and started bringing the salt in from Europe, he would have macrobiotic cooking classes, and that people would say, I want some salt. And he would say, well, how much money do you have in your pocket? And they go, well, I got a $5 bill. And he goes, okay, give it to me. So that's how the pricing of the Celtic sea salt started.
Interesting.
And it's been $5 a pound for I think it was just maybe 5 years ago we actually did a price increase. So it's been $5 a pound forever from the very beginning. Um, but that's really how it all started. And Jacques Delangre and his wife Yvette, my in-laws, started the company in the early 70s. And this was when the Adele Davis and macrobiotics, those kind of diets, that we didn't have all the diets we have today. These are diets that
Right.
go way back. And theirs was macrobiotics. So when they started to doing the research of health and nutrition, they met a man named George Osawa, and he was a huge macrobiotic um, professor in Europe. Michio Kushi was the one that was in the United States with the Macrobiotic Foundation, and George Osawa did all of Europe. So they really clicked with George Osawa, but George Osawa had a book that was written by a Dr. Rene Canton, and that's where the Slovak brothers come in because this man was amazing. George Osawa said, you need to tell people about the importance of the ocean and the minerals in the ocean. So as Jacques took that on, he realized it's not just the seawater like the aquan, the Quinton products, the seawater. It's also the sea salt that comes from there. And so that's when his research started about the different kinds of salts and uh, sorry,
Oh, you're good.
different kinds of salts, and that's what he started doing. So as he started doing this research, and the story, if you know the Slovak brothers, you definitely know the story of the products. But this is some of the books that George Osawa published, and these are just some of them. He published hundreds and hundreds of books, and his research was done on his own body. So he would say, like, what would happen if I ate this much sugar for 25 days? And he would actually do his own blood work and everything like that to show. So that's way back when that George Osawa. Well, George Osawa realized that we were coming into a time of having deficiencies. And he realized that we need to figure out a way, what is a full spectrum of minerals that would help with these deficiencies. And that's when he said to Jacques, you need to educate people on Rene Canton's book, which his book is this book, and educate people on the amazing elements that are in the ocean. So as Jacques started to research that, he did realize that the this ocean plasma was very important. but he also realized that salt is important too. And there's actually a difference in salts. And back then, people didn't know that there was a difference in salts. And so he started to doing research, and being from France, the first salt that he started bringing in was a salt from Brittany, France. And the mineral composition of that salt was done at a university in Nantes in France. And the only analysis he had for us to use was the actual seawater, which is different from the sea salt. The seawater analysis is different from the sea salt analysis. So Jacques wrote his whole book based on the analysis done on the seawater. So the reason I did not republish his book is because I wanted to do it on salt. So I redid my book, and that's when I did full analysis of all of our salts to make sure that they have the right composition. And that's when I started to educate people on the actual analysis on the sea salt. And that's where I came in. But for years, this man, he was really called kind of a whack, way back then, talking about sea salt and, that there's a difference and everything. But even the testimonials that he has in his book way back then are pretty amazing, of people doing nothing but changing their salt. That's all they did, was change their salt. So it's pretty amazing how the company started, and it's just a commodity that's been around for over 2,000 years, but it's almost like he lit it up and he brought it back into the existence and educated people on the importance of it. Definitely. As he did that, he wanted to also educate people that table salt is really not something that should be consumed, and that's what he tried to educate, was that yes, the high blood pressure stuff is coming from table salt, not sea salt. Table salt is just pure sodium chloride that has additives in it, free-flowing agents. It has dextrose. It has bleaching agents in there. And so that's what his main mission was to educate people that table salt is not what we should be eating, but we should be eating a, completely natural, nothing added, nothing removed sea salt.
Awesome. Yeah. You talked about being like self-experimenting. I think that's the most important thing, because like we can look at all these research studies, which are important, but like if we're not in the study, it might not be a direct parallel, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And for over all these years now, it's funny how you can go out there and there's a lot of education talking about the difference and how our body assimilates table salt versus natural salt. But I think the people listening to your audience are already educated to where they understand that you're supposed to eat your foods in its most natural form that you could possibly get them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned Rene Quinton. He's a definitely interesting guy and all that story. You want to talk about Quinton a little bit and how like that plays into minerals and the benefits, all that?
Absolutely. And I actually got to see his Rene Quinton's apartment in Paris.
Really?
Which was really exciting. Yes. And, his work was actually, he started his work, and it was interesting how when he started his work, he was almost like Jacques. He was looked at as a quack and didn't really wasn't respected. He actually was able to get the plasma. Let me go back and tell you what his work was and what he found out. And this is where I get cold chills, because of this is pretty divinely created. The ocean, the earth has 70% fluid in it. Our bodies have 70% fluid. The ocean has a concentration of minerals, which is the highest concentration are sodium, chloride, calcium, magnesium, potassium, and phosphorus. Our human plasma, the highest concentration, is exactly the same minerals.
Yeah, very interesting.
That just gives me goosebumps, because you just think, wow, what a creation, to think that those similarities, how we mimic that. So basically he realized this, and so he started to do experiments, and he actually took all the blood out of a dog and replaced it with the marine plasma. And in 18 hours, this dog's vital signs were back to normal.
Yeah, that's amazing. Definitely.
Yeah, I know. And so he started to do this in the hospitals, and he was making huge progress, but the blood bank realized that they were losing money. And so they were able to get him completely out of the hospital and not use that product in any of the hospitals in Europe, even though they were having huge success with that.
Yeah, it's all too common of a story.
I know. It's a crazy thing. But the reason it's such a special solution is because where they go extract this seawater is not just random places anywhere. It has to be a very highly concentrated place in the ocean that has, look at that gorgeous vortex.
Yeah.
And that vortex is actually the ocean's currents that concentrate plankton. And that plankton is in this highly concentrated area, and it pre-digests the minerals, so it's more bioavailable. So the way the Aquan products, and this is how it comes in a box, and you can see it comes in this. Is this going to be visual or just?
Yeah, it'll be visual. People see it.
Okay, great. So you can see here, and you just open these little packets and put them right in your mouth, hold it in your mouth for just a few seconds, and then swallow it.
Interesting.
It's just water.
Yeah.
So it's completely bioavailable. So you can take this and immediately it goes into the system and it's absorbed through all the cells immediately. The Celtic sea salt has to go through the digestive system, in order for it to have its bioavailability. This does not. It immediately goes into the cells and penetrates all the cells. And that's what the Aquan is. It's just this concentration of seawater. The way they find it is they have on their boat, they have this screen, and it shows where from a satellite view, it shows where the concentration of phytoplankton of the vortex is. And then they go in there and that's where they extract the water. Then they bring it back to the lab and they mix it with structured spring water to make it the perfect ratio of sodium and the other minerals.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then, and years ago, this is in 1906 to 1925, the before and after pictures are completely crazy about what Rene Canton's before and after pictures were.
Yeah. Wow.
I know. It's pretty amazing, huh?
That's like a total transformation.
Yeah, it is. And then it's ironic because I even have a personal testimonial. My granddaughter, she had a seizure when she was about 3 years old, and we found a neurologist and we took her to this neurologist, and he realized that her mitochondria was compromised. And so she really needed to get her nutrients in a more bioavailable cocktail, and he recommends this product, which was crazy, not even knowing that we were associated. But he said, I highly recommend your granddaughter taking this product as much as possible. And so we've actually been without it, and she doesn't do well, but my grandkids crave this and they just drink it, and it's very safe. You can't really overdo it. It's very harmonious to the body. But that's what this liquid is. We call it Aquan Matrix.
Yeah, I feel like definitely a lot more energetic when I take Quinton. It's it's kind of like something like you may have been missing for a long time. It just kind of gets in there and you just feel so different. You can just do so many more things. That's what I feel when I take it. So
yeah, we have testimonials of my friend Jordan Rubin that used to own Garden of Life. He has a son that is a football player, and he said that he brings it to the games and the people that are taking it actually perform better.
I would imagine that it's better than Gatorade.
Yeah, exactly, without the sugar and everything, and it's more bioavailable. And people ask, well, if you just took the Celtic sea salt and put it in some water, are you going to get the same thing? I think that if that's all you had, you probably would, but there is an essence of this becoming more bioavailable. It is like you can feel it immediately, compared to taking a drink of salt water.
Yeah, and real quick for the people listening, if you want to see all the visuals, go to the YouTube version. It's the same name as the podcast, Anthony Costello Wellness, and that's where you can see all the pictures here. So I just want to mention that.
Okay.
Yeah. Another thing, you went briefly over the table salt. I'm curious, like, what is the origin of the table salt? Like, how did it all start? Because as you know, it's like very highly processed. There's barely any minerals in there. It's a lot of interesting effects. Like we talk about when we see the research in terms of, because there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to salt, but it's not really that salt that people are misconceptions of. It's really like the highly processed stuff with isolated sodium chloride. And like, how did it all start exactly? Do you know?
Yeah. Actually, it started with understanding that we needed to start producing salt at a much more mass, you know what I mean? Huge volumes, which the salts that we bring in is all harvested by hand. And so they can't do it. So in any food that you're mass producing, you're going to use equipment. So the way that the Morton salt gets their salt is they actually extract water down into the surface of the earth, bring this water back up, and it has a saline in it. And then they put it in this big heating thing. I have a picture of it here in Jacques' book. And they extract all of the salt from that. So it's a huge process, you can see.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, to get it. And basically, you know, salt comes back from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. It was actually used as a salary, you know,
Yeah.
at one time they used it as money. And they have actually tried to defeat wars by removing the salt from the community, knowing that they would become ill if they didn't have their salt. So a lot of wars have been fought with salt. You have Gandhi and what he did with the salt. So salt goes way back, way back. But as far as the processing of salt, they realized that just like they do with white bread and sugar and everything, that it could be, they thought they could make it better. And how they, because it was, our salt is clumpy. It will get, you know, all clumpy if there's humidity in the air. So they put a free flowing agent in their salt.
Okay.
Yeah. They also want to make it, they want to iodize it. So when you iodize salt, it causes it to turn a little bit of a purplish color. So they had to bleach it. They had to put a bleaching agent because they wanted to make it as white and pure as possible. The bleaching agent made it a little bit bitter, so they had to add dextrose to it. So that's table salt.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. So in the book, you talk about a lot of business struggle that you had coming up, and definitely a lot of interesting challenges. I'm curious, like, what are some of those challenges, and how have they made you grow as a company, as a person, and what are some of the lessons that you learned from that?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, I don't think anything happens to us. I believe that everything happens for us.
Mm-hmm.
And with all of the different challenges that have come with the company, we've had brand infringement where we had a huge company come and try to take the Celtic sea salt brand and make it a generic term. And that cost, gosh, over $92,000 to protect it. And that was very, I don't know what word to say, very easy to fall into a victim mode of that, because you think that if you go and register a brand and get the USPTO office to give you your your registration, you're set to go, right? Nope. Basically, my attorney said that R only gives you the right to go to court. That's all that it does. So we were taken to court to try to make our brand a generic term. And it took me over a year to fight them, a lot of money. And I realized I just had to surrender. So I did license the right to this person to just use it on one product. But that's been one of the biggest challenges to protecting the intellectual property for the company. And that's been a really big challenge, because it's a commodity. It's not like it's a formula of anything. And people are talking about salt so much today, they're actually thinking that Celtic sea salt is a type. They don't realize it's a registered trademark brand. So I'm having to spend a lot of investment to get to protect our brand and inform people that it's actually intellectual property and you can't use it on your product. So I'm having to educate people on that. That's been a little bit of a blessing and a curse, because the blessing is people are promoting our salt without asking for royalties because they think it's and the curse is, of course, the, protecting the intellectual property.
Good.
So that's been one of the business challenges. Also, just, getting a product into distribution and making it available is very humbling. Also, you got to spend a lot of money with brokers and distributors to get it out there, and it requires a lot of capital. And that's really frustrating because you want to keep it at a price people can afford. But if you want to get it make it accessible, you got to put a price on it to be able to do that. And we've gone back and forth with that quite a bit over the years, is keeping it affordable, but being able to play the game and get it out there in all the distribution channels, the Whole Foods and the KeHE's and every place where it's at. And that's been a challenge, but that's not unique to anybody else out there. Everybody that wants to get into the business, that's what they've had to do with,
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like going through that? Like, what was going through your head, and like what were some strategies that used to solve that and get on the other side of it?
Oh my gosh. The thing that went through my head was this. We were able to get the Celtic sea salt in every single Whole Foods in the country.
Oh, really?
And this was in 1996, without a broker and without a distributor. And this was all because of those amazing people here on the wall, these amazing masters that have educated people on how they should eat. Thank you for them. And because of that, we had it in demand, and we were able to get it in all these stores. Well, we realized that these stores, as they grew, they don't really like to buy directly from the supplier or the vendor. They want to go through the big distributors, which is UNFI and KeHE, and it just makes their life simpler. In doing that, the distributors require a 25% margin to be able to sell to their retailers. Okay. The broker gets a 5%. So we had to turn over millions of dollars worth of our business that we grew ourselves to a distributor and a broker. Just take all that business and just give it to them. And with the media, they were getting all this commission. And that was very hard to digest. I'm telling you, there were so many salespeople that come and go, well, they just did this free fill. And a free fill is basically, if they buy one case, they get a case for free. Or you have to pay slotting fees to get your products on the shelf. So, $5,000, $10,000 slotting fees just to buy the space on the shelf. This was very disturbing to me, because I just thought, this isn't fair. I can't believe we have to do this.
Yeah.
But it's how you play the game, and we did. And now looking back at that, it was a good thing. But you know what, Anthony? Today, with all these people's products, amazing products that are out on the market today, that we maybe can't even get them because of what it takes to get them out there. The amount of capital it takes to get a product out there.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
In the book, you also talk about like a lot of family challenges that were coming up, especially like along with the business. You want to talk about that? Possibly like you talk a lot about your son in the book as well. Is that something you want to talk about, with a lot of the challenges and lessons from that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome.
My son, I was 20 years old when my son was born, and he was born with cerebral palsy. So he lived to be 28 years old, and he never spoke a word. He couldn't chew food. He was basically like a 3-month-old infant for the 28 years that he was here on earth. And I'll tell you, that alone is very humbling. But like I started the conversation with, nothing happens to you. It happens for you. Yeah. And what's ironic is I have 4 sisters, and I was the one that ate really clean and did all the right things. and they just did their McDonald's and all their things. And they had these perfect, beautiful children. And here I am with my little guy. You can imagine how humbling
Yeah.
that would be. And I never really questioned, oh, well, maybe this health food thing is not real. My common sense told me.
Yeah.
But as I kind of carried this guilt and this shame, for so many years of having my child, because I decided to have him at home and he got stuck in the birth canal. And so I judged myself, and many others judged me too for that decision. But in those times, a lot of people were having their babies at home and everything was fine.
Mm-hmm.
So for years, I carried that guilt. And then, 28 years later, I was introduced to a psychic, and I've never really been to a psychic, never done any of that, but I was introduced to a psychic, and I think it was meant to be, because this psychic told me that my son and I, before we were incarnated, we agreed to do this. And it's like two souls not having physical bodies yet saying, one of you has to come in here with a lot of special needs and the other one's going to be the caregiver, and you're both going to gain from this. And he Dominique raised his hands, I'll be the special needs because I kind of want this to be my last time coming in. And this psychic told me all of this in a reading. I'm just thinking, but Anthony, as this psychic's telling me this, it's as if I remembered the conversation. My guilt completely went away. And this was on February 20th in 2007. I went, yes, that's it. I remember. We agreed to do this. This wasn't anything that I did. It wasn't, anything that I had to be forgiven for or anything. We agreed to have this life plan. Well, on February 22nd, he was with his caregiver, and he would go with her throughout the week, and I'd pick him up on the weekends. And I said, can you keep him one more day and I'll come and get him the next day? And she said, yeah. And so the next morning, which was a Saturday morning, February 22nd, I wake up and I said, Dominique's going to die today. My son's name was Dominique. And I said, he's going to die today. I don't know why I was saying this, but I was I told my two daughters, your brother's going to die today. Do you want to come and be with me? And they go, yeah, right, Mom. Just let me know. Because he wasn't sick. There was nothing wrong with him. He wasn't sick. And I was telling everyone, and it was something inside of me that wanted to have as many witnesses as I possibly could. I guess my soul was telling me to do this. So I go to the caregiver's house, and there's my son. He's laying on the couch, and I walk in the door, and I told him, I says, Dominique, I remember. It's okay now. You're free. I remember. And he looked over at me, Anthony, and a little tear came out of his eye.
Wow.
It was so amazing. And I told the caregiver, I says, why don't you leave the house? And I'm just going to lay here with him. And she said, okay. And we put music on. And somebody told me to get crystals for him, because they said that when someone crosses over, they can hold an energy in a crystal. So I had all these crystals, and I was putting these crystals in his hand as he was laying on my chest. And the last crystal I put in his hand, and he just kind of opened his mouth, and just kind of his head went back and his eyes just stayed open, and that was it.
Wow. Yes. Very.
Is that, how can I make up that story? And that's why I feel like I had to tell so many people about the story, so that I would have a before witness, if you understand what I mean. Like, I wanted people to see, how could I have made this up, right?
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, here's a picture of where he was laying on me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was it. So after he crossed over, as I was lifting him up off of me, he made a sound. I went, oh, well, maybe it's not. He's still here. But it was air, I think, was trapped inside of him. Mm-hmm. I laid him over on the couch, and I went, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do now. What do you do? Do I call 911? What do I do? And not with these ears, but inside my head, it was like, go get a pen and paper. So I went and got a pen and paper, and I just started writing. And it was as if he was writing through me. Mom, thank you so much for allowing me to come here the way I did. Make sure you tell my sister Carla why I called her in. Tell my sister Colette why I called her in. But the main thing I want to let you know, Mom, is I came here to teach you to just be.
Wow. That's
Because
amazing.
that's all he did. Yeah. And that, I'm telling you, Anthony, out of every lesson in my life, out of every teacher, everything, this guy taught me more, and he never spoke a word. He taught me more than any person could ever teach me, and just in his silence and his presence.
Yeah, it's very interesting how that works. Yeah, that's I don't really know what to say. That's just definitely an enlightening story for me. So
Yeah, it was for me too, and I'm grateful that I got to have this entire full circle story.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, definitely full circle.
Yeah. So now when people come to me and they just say, "Oh my God, my life is falling apart," da, 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 and I go, "No, no, 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 no. You don't might not know now, but I guarantee you, there is a blessing coming out of this. But you have to be aligned with that blessing. You can't attract all the negative things of anything happening to you. You got to say, how is this happening for me?"
Hmm. And then when we get to the other side of that, we can do what you're doing and help the masses in a bigger way than we currently are, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's why I was called to write the book. And the book was very hard for me to write. It was like I had to do some real soul forgiving with this book. I almost just threw it away and said, I'm not doing it. But my daughter, she said, no, Mom, this story needs to be told. And you're going to help other people by them listening to this story. So I stuck it out and I read it. But the book was started to be a book just educating on sea salt, but you can be educated on sea salt by the internet. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm not going to share any new stuff. And I felt that I kind of feel like as a human, we are, our expansion comes from stories, from
Definitely.
hearing people's stories and their own experiences and their victories. And so that's why I decided to kind of pivot the book and tell about my whole life story too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another challenge is I believe it's from writing the book. Like you've been having like completely sold out of salt like the past few months. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
is that like?
Do you want to hear about that? Oh my gosh. Well, January, all of a sudden the orders start coming in. We go, that's so weird. That's really weird. What's going on? I don't know what's going on. This is amazing how it just went crazy and the orders started coming in and we couldn't keep up. And I'm telling you, let's just fast forward to today. $9 million worth of back orders in my system.
Wow.
$9 million. And I'm going, oh my gosh, what is going on? The interesting thing is we have hand packed this salt for 45 years.
Mm-hmm.
So now, for the first time in the history of the company, I've had to go out and interview co-packers to help us with this. And that's been like, like, what am I doing? But we've done really good job of making sure that their quality is there, visiting the place and making sure that that we're not going to compromise any quality by using a co-packer. And that's what we were working on. We have 3 co-packers on board right now. And I don't know how many more we need, but with these kind of back orders. And you know what else? We've turned all of our international business down. We've stopped selling on Amazon. I'm telling you, I don't know. And I don't know where this is going. I'm just grateful. And I'm just, showing up. You know what? There's another thing that I want your listeners to hear is this. We think that we're doing it all, but at the end of the day, I'm just a steward of this amazing brand and product. And I'm just showing up, trying to do the very best I can do to make it available.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I can't I can't take the credit for this. It's the right time and the right place. And if I was to start a sea salt company today, of course it wouldn't be the success that it is. It was the right timing that the salt came, and the brand and the integrity and the diversification that I've done with the salt. We started out as just a mail order company with our newsletter, and we had 82,000 members in our as a subscriber to our newsletter. And we had the newsletter was about 35 pages, 36 pages. And we had contributors from all over the world that educated people on health, nutrition, meditation, frequencies, vibration, just mind, body, soul. And this was before the internet. So we were out there like educating people on, wellness and all of that before there was ever anything on the internet. And that's how the company started. And we just sold directly to the customer. Well, then we got into distribution, and then we had people that started companies, and they said, we only want Celtic sea salt and as an ingredient, because they were very high integrity products. And so then we started branching out to selling to ingredient customers. Then we had so many doctors that had practices, and we have over 2,500 doctors in our database that have the salt in their clinic that sell it to patients. We've branded the Celtic sea salt brand in 18 different countries, and we have distribution all over the world. And like I said, I just showed up. Did I do it? Like if you said, hey, Selina, I'm going to hire you to do that for me. I said, there's no way. I just every day showed up and said, let's pivot here. Let's pivot there. Let's do this. And basically that's where we are today. And, it's funny because, and I'm being very transparent to all you listeners out there, because before COVID, I couldn't seem to break this $5 million mark, for the company. And we would lose some clients, gain some clients, lose some, gain some. And so I started to create other products. Like I created this seasoning, we call it super seasoning, and it has 7 different mushrooms in it, 4 different seaweeds in it. It has moringa and all these different superfoods in it, but it has a flavor too. So when you're flavoring your salt, you get all these superfoods. So it was like a category disruptor I did for the seasonings. And I did that because we needed to get past that 5 million point. Well, then COVID hit. All my seasonings were all ready to go to market and they were all excited. Well, COVID hit. And with the COVID hit, we grew like overnight 25%. And I think that's because there was nothing really viral other than people they were cooking at home more. Definitely. I know that did a lot to do with it. But they were also realizing that they couldn't really count on the modern medicine to help them in what they were going through. They knew that they needed to improve their immune system. Yeah. And they knew this was a very small place in improving the immune system. And so it just went crazy. So there was a bump there. And then just this year, there was the bump also of the demand. And we're just trying to keep up with the demand. That's really it.
Makes sense. You talk about how you're kind of like a facilitator of a mission, right? It's not just us. It's kind of like, because that's the insight I've had recently as well. It's not like it's all just me. Like there's so many people that have helped me get here. There's so many circumstances that could have gone differently. And I just feel like it's not like just me. It's not just the business. It's kind of like an energy working through me. I'm more of a facilitator of a mission. That's how I feel about it.
I agree. And I agree. Every experience we have is like, it's like a chain of all these little links that lead us to who we are. Mm-hmm. And I just read a book called Source Happiness by Mo Goldalt or something. And he said in there, it was so beautiful. He says, if you were to take the most traumatic experience you've ever had and erase it from your life, but if you erased it, you have to erase every single thing that came after and came through it. Would you do that? And he said, like 90% of people said, no, I wouldn't erase that, because I wouldn't, like even having my son, would I erase that experience? No, because I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have met all the amazing people that I have met and the expansion because of that experience. So I'm going to agree with you, just take it another twist, is every experience we have in our life is an opportunity for us to expand another chain of links that can go to something else. And we're all called to do this, to take our experiences, share these stories, and see how we can help other people with these stories.
Absolutely. So transitioning a little bit. We talked about this, but we're gonna circle back to it just a little bit. So there's a lot of like misconceptions with salt. So maybe we can speak to the importance of it and how, like, why are there a lot of misconceptions and the difference between like, because most people are getting their salt from like highly processed foods today. So like, what should we be looking for generally, like principles when it comes to salt and minerals and all that, and the importance of salt?
First of all, I would say go in your kitchen, go in your house, and get rid of as many box processed foods as possible. That's the very first thing I would say, is that, because that just comes, and I'm not just saying it's just the sodium you're getting from that, it's all the things you're getting from processed foods.
Yeah.
It's not meant for us to consume. So that's the first thing I would say. And I would say, even when we say we consume all these milligrams of salt, it's through processed foods.
Right.
That we're consuming. It's not that we're pouring it on our food, it's processed foods. Then the other thing I would say, when you're looking at a salt, really just try to find something that is not 99% sodium chloride, because sodium is an element and chloride is an element. Together they're a compound. And it's very important that when we are consuming our minerals, we do them in the most natural form as possible, because they actually play a role with each other. Potassium helps the sodium, the calcium helps the magnesium. They all are helping each other in the absorption and the assimilation of the minerals. When you isolate them, that's when your body doesn't really understand what to do. So I would just tell people to go out there and look at the mineral composition, on it. And it's not about how much sodium is on the package, it's about how much sodium chloride is in there. So all of our salts are anywhere from 78 to 85% sodium chloride. Does that mean that the magnesium, potassium, and the calcium, there's enough to be a supplement? No. It's only saying that's the best way that you should be consuming sodium and chloride, is with those elements, so that it is absorbed properly. That's why. But if you say, oh, I'm getting all the calcium I need because there's calcium in the Celtic sea salt, that is not the case. There is not enough nutrients in this salt to be a supplement. It's only a balance of electrolytes that helps you assimilate the sodium and the chloride properly.
Yeah, because if we talk about our ancestors, like, we would never consume like things in isolation typically. Like, even when it comes to supplements, like, instead of just taking like a, say, turmeric, for example, like, we know taking it with other spicy herbs like pepper kind of boosts its availability, and it goes with everything. Like, there's synergy that happens in nature that doesn't happen in isolation. Like, there's in food, there's bio constituents, cofactors that make everything work together. Then if you're just taking an isolated supplement, even though those have their place, that's why food first is always recommended.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you're familiar with the book Biological Transmutation, but it definitely talks about that, how the isolation of nutrients is not the best thing that we can do for our body. Yeah. It's in its natural form as possible, because it needs each other, to be able to have the potency and the power that it has, basically. And that's why I think, just as a diet in general, try to eat things that are closest to the earth as possible. Just eat things that are unprocessed as possible. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, even to, and I think that's the bottom line. And people can, think that you need to be a rocket scientist to understand that, but you don't. You just need to try to give me commodities that are close as possible to our own body. And that's what I think is so beautiful about the sea salts that we source, is we have them all analyzed. About 4 or 5 years ago, I decided to just go ahead and invest in taking all of my salts and having them analyzed, and do a whole 72 analysis on it, 72 mineral analysis on it. It's not easy to find a lab that can do all of the analysis on all of these different minerals, but I was able to find one, and I did across the board. And it was very eye-opening, because for years I had thought that if the fine ground salt, because their salt comes in a coarse crystal, And then we also have that same coarse crystal, but it's in a fine ground. So I thought that the nutrients were less in the fine ground, but in the analysis, it's almost identical. So it's amazing how all these assumptions I'd say for years and years, oh, you don't want to use the fine ground. It's a little bit more processed, use the light gray crystals. The analysis is showing that it did not alter the mineral analysis at all. So it's the same. The sourcing of the salt, when I realized that the demand was growing, I also realized that I shouldn't be counting on one region because anything could happen. A natural disaster or even an oil spill or anything could happen from that region. And so I started to travel the world looking for salts that mimicked the same as the original Celtic sea salt with those minerals of the magnesium, the calcium, and the potassium in it, and also the pH. And that's why now we have a salt from Guatemala. We have one from Spain. We have one from Hawaii. And all of these salts have come to me. I didn't go out there and find them. It was like the universe just said, okay, here's another one. And they would come to me at a trade show or whatever. Can you analyze my salt? For instance, the Hawaiian salt, I was at a trade show and this pharmacist came to me and he gave me a little vial of salt and he says, will you have this analyzed? I heard you're the salt person. And I said, sure. So I sent it to my lab. I could not believe the analysis. The pH was 10. I couldn't believe it. All my other pHs on the salts are maybe 7.5 to 8, and the pH was 10. So it was so alkaline, I couldn't believe it. Yeah. The calcium was off the charts with this salt. It was just a really beautiful salt. And I said, I got to learn more. So I went to Hawaii and saw how they did it. So this salt, they extract 2,000 feet below the surface of the water, and they bring this water up. And then they put it in these salt huts and they let the water evaporate into the crystals. And that's what this salt is. And it is so amazing. It is such an amazing salt.
Is that the Mackay salt?
Yeah, that's the Mackay.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I've had that one.
Well, I was concerned that they wouldn't be able to keep up with my demand. So I put that out in the universe. And then I was approached by someone from Molokai. And so now we have two sources of the same salt. The difference is the one from Kona comes from 2,000 feet below the surface of the water. The one from Molokai is surface water, but it's filtered in this huge filtration system. And then it's put in these little boxes with this little thing that closes up, and the water is in there, and that's where it evaporates in these little boxes, and that's where you get these crystals. It's the same alkalinity, same calcium, same everything. And so I was thinking, oh, it's because it's the deep sea water. No, it's because the coral reefs in Hawaii are very high in calcium. And that's what makes the alkalinity and the high calcium, because the water in these coral reefs.
That's fascinating.
I know. It's so great. People love this salt because it's so alkaline that they like to make their own Gatorade with it and put some lemon and put it in the water and drink it that way. The salt that I'm really excited about today is a salt that I found in Spain that comes from a salt mountain. And it's pretty interesting because I've never really picked up mined salts before, but I thought, well, it's worth me investigating this salt. So I went there and I saw it. And when it rains, these icicle-like crystals form. I wish I had a picture of it here. Carter, can you give me that picture up there of that? And these crystals form like icicles in the cave, and that's the salt. But this is the highest form of potassium. You can kind of see here.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, wow. It's so beautiful.
Definitely.
Yeah. And this salt is off the charts with its potassium level, and it's naturally occurring. It's nothing that's added, nothing's removed. So I'm very excited about this salt that we're bringing into the country. And then there is another salt that we bring in from Spain. Now, this salt was a little bit challenging for me to bring in because it's 99.73% sodium chloride. And I thought, ooh, isn't that kind of going against the Celtic sea salt, composition that we're supposed to bring in? Well, I went to go visit the salt flats, and they're pristine, and hand harvesting is so beautiful. But what they do is they boil this salt 3 times to get every single piece of impurity out of it. And they do it
Nice.
for that reason. But they do not put free flowing agents. They do not put anything else in it. It's just 100% sodium chloride. So the only thing they're doing is getting impurities out of it. I'm thinking, oh, but is that what I'm supposed to be bringing in? Well, we realize that there's a lot of ingredient customers that really would prefer a real pure salt that doesn't have all these minerals in it because it alters their finished product. And so they
Right.
kind of want a good salt that's just 99% sodium chloride.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So we brought this in, and we really don't sell it to the end user, or none of our clients actually buy it to use on their food or anything, but it's great ingredient salt that we brought in too.
Yeah.
So Anthony, in all these years, I have always made sure that if people are going to trust the Celtic Sea Salt brand, I better make sure that I have enough supply for the demand. And so I've definitely had to diversify that supply.
Definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
So I know we spoke to this a little bit as well, but just go into the importance of quality and sourcing, because I know like there's a lot of mineral analysis for different salt companies. They may not necessarily be so clean, because I've read a lot of them myself. A lot of them tend to be contaminated. Maybe you can talk about the importance of sourcing and how that outcomes the quality of the salt.
Absolutely. There are salts that I have had to turn down when I went to go visit. And there are salts that I have had to help improve the production so that it's a better quality that they're coming out with also. So I have brought salt farmers from the original place, which is France, to help other communities like Guatemala. And I had a salt from Guatemala, from Haiti also at one time, to make sure they improve so that the quality is what it needs to be. There's a salt in Portugal that I bring in, but I'm bringing the one in that I have a personal relationship with, because the other ones are very close to a sewage overflow. And so you have to understand that that could possibly happen, and you have to be aware of that. So it's in the sourcing, going to visit the salt flats, making sure wherever. Oh, also in Guatemala, when I first visited them, they were harvesting, they were barefooted in the salt flats, and I go, let's not be barefooted. So I've had to make some improvements, help them make some improvements with it, very small ones. Or they were covering the salt with a plastic that I did not think was suitable. It was not food grade. So making those alters with the salt suppliers is what I've done with each one of my salt suppliers to make sure the quality is there. As far as quality, as I guess contaminants, that's what I look for. But there's also a lot of things circulating about the lead in salt, the aluminum in salt, the microplastics in salt, and all of those things. And I hold that really serious and responsible to make sure I address all of those things. So I look into it, but at the end of the day, it's because sea salt has become such a buzz. A lot of these people are going out there and trying to get market share by putting one down or the other one down or whatever, and they're trying to do it. But at the end of the day, all these salts contain the same thing. It's the earth crust. The earth crust has naturally occurring lead. The earth crust has naturally occurring aluminum, arsenic, all these things. It's in the earth crust. What I want to make sure is it's safe amount. So I go out there and do the research to say, if someone is eating this much of the Celtic sea salt a day, how much of that aluminum are they getting? And is it naturally occurring aluminum, or is it a synthetic aluminum that is from, like cookware and things like that? It has been very challenging for me to stay up on that. It's very
It
hard.
sounds like it.
Yeah, it's been very hard for me to find chemists that don't have an agenda, that they're wanting to push their own salt, so they're going to have their own agenda. It's hard for me to find someone that understands that there is a difference in heavy metals out there that are naturally occurring in the elements. I mean, even apples have naturally occurring arsenic in it. So I've had to really go in there and making sure. I have 2,500 doctors that promote our salt. I better have my act together and make sure I'm not letting something go out there that's not healthy. That's how I handle it. I do my very, very best, but like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not any of that, but I do my best. I work with the suppliers. They have their own certificate of quality that they have to abide by in their country of origin before they can even import it as a food grade salt, which is they go in and take tests from the soil, test from the salt flats, to make sure that there's no contaminants in there. And they have to do this annually to make sure that nothing's in there. I also do the analysis myself to make sure I'm watching, is any of these contaminants rising? Are they going up throughout the years as the earth gets more polluted or whatever it is? Do they go up? They haven't gone up in all these years, which leads me to believe what my father-in-law always said in his book, that the ocean has a magical ability to almost restore itself, almost like, heal itself. I just go over and beyond with my analysis. I try to do my very best to educate the people and not just try to pull the wool over people's eyes and say it's safe. I have my blood work done every 3 months just because I'm a kind of a blood work freak, and I have never had any toxins of heavy metals in my system. So, I don't know any other way to show people. I do know when the microplastic thing started, I sent the salt to a lab that I found here in the United States, but it was a forensic lab, which means only what they could visually see was the analysis. And that's what some of my competitors are using now. I don't have microplastics because you can see it says 0 microplastics, but it's the same lab I use, which was a forensic test. And I wasn't satisfied with that. So I found the lab in Europe that wrote that article that microplastics is in sea salt. And I sent all of my salts to that lab, every single one of them. And everyone came back with different ratios. But at the end of the day, I'm telling you, it was like 5 micromilligrams per 2 kilos. So it was like whatever this big buzz was, you would have to eat a lot of salt to get any microplastics. I also did the research that there's more microplastics in water, beer, and the air that we breathe. So I thought, okay, you can sleep tonight, Selina. You're not poisoning anybody. If somebody shows up and they have microplastics, it's not coming from your salt.
Yeah, just very difficult to get away from completely in today's world, but we can do our best for sure, right?
Yeah, but I just want people to know that I lose a lot of sleep taking this responsibility seriously,
Yeah,
when this comes, and I really do. And I just continue to try to educate people, be as transparent as possible. I'm open to anybody else bringing information to me that I don't know about, help me expand my knowledge on this. But I am doing my very best to make sure that I'm providing the highest quality with the most harmonious mineral composition possible to the public.
Awesome. All right, Selina, this has been amazing. We definitely had an awesome interview. We talked about your store. We talked about Celtic salt, the minerals, importance, all that, everything in between. Is there anything that's on your mind that's coming through that you really want to get out to people at this moment?
Yeah, I want people to be aware that nutrients are extremely important, but thoughts are more important. And we really need to watch our thoughts. And being in this industry for all the years that I've been in this industry, I've watched a lot of people that have eaten amazing diets, but they still have gotten bad diseases, died of cancer, all these other things. And the only thing I can say is the nutrients, the food, the cleanliness of all our diet and everything is just one of the components. Our thoughts are pretty significant in the condition of our health.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Because like holistic, it's not just about like nutrition and sleep, exercise. Those are extremely important, obviously, but like there's so many other pillars that we tend not to think about. Our mental state being one of them, of course. So yeah, definitely important.
And isn't it crazy, Anthony? Because people say, oh, well, I don't make enough money to have a natural diet, or, it's too expensive. The most important thing we can do for our life is free. and that's meditate, exercise, and pray. And
Yeah.
and it's the last thing on our agenda. Why is that?
That's crazy.
But it is. But just being in this industry for all these years, I used to go to the trade shows when there was maybe like 30 vendors. Today there's like thousands and thousands. So I'm definitely a pioneer that's watched this whole natural products, thing completely expand. But I'm going to say it again. Please watch your thoughts. Watch what you're thinking. It's so important. It's really everything.
Awesome. So if people want to connect with you, get their hands on some Celtic salt, where can they go with that?
You can go to our good luck. You can go to our website, and that's selinanaturally.com. We are filling orders. We are, prioritizing. What I have done is I've tried to prioritize who's getting the salt, and I put my doctors as a priority, my ingredient customers as a priority, because the ingredient customers, they have to go out and make the product and they can't wait for this. And my doctors, they're the ones that put us on the map. You know what I mean? They're the ones that were there and made us who we are. So I've prioritized those orders. So ask your doctor if they have it too.
Awesome. Yeah. And the book's on the site as well, right?
Yes. The
All right.
book is on the site too.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Selina.
Thank you, Anthony.